Hi there everybody and welcome. I want to show you my new script, Batch Processor Helper. Personally, in my work, it actually saved me a lot of time, maybe days, weeks, even actually months of work. So who is the script for? Let's take a look. It is specifically needed for people who are forced to process a whole lot of my files at their work, either manually or automatically or in a package form. Let me show you how it works. First of all, let's start with the setup. You download it, unzip it, find the folder Batch Processing Helper, and then just drag and drop this file into the My scene. File is installed. Let's open it. So how does it work? What does it do? So to process a huge number of files, first, we need to collect these files or add these files to the list. We use collect files function for that. Here we specify the text file, which will contain all the files that we're supposed to be working with, so all the files we need to process. And here there is a mask that searches for necessary files. So in this case, all the files with the MB extension is going to be added to list anim.txt. Then I press select directory button. Let's select the folder. For that, save. You're going to see it's going to open a text file, and it contains all of the files with the MB extension from the selected folder and all the folders inside, so it kind of searches recursively. There is a manual collect files function. This is specifically for files that you possibly do not need to collect them, like from folders and subfolders, and you want to collect them manually. You can add to file to this existing file. If you turn it off, you can just override the existing file. An open file is going to open the file right after the collection has ended. I'm going to open the folder. Let's say I'm going to find a few, maybe these files. You're going to see that it's going to add these files to this list. And for the further convenience, I actually advise you to open this file, like for future projects and for future work. Open this file in the text editor for programmers. I mean, like Visual Studio or at least Notepad++. Sublime is a very good option as well. Because the reason for that is that these programs, this software, they actually signal when the file is changed, maybe was updated with new date or something like that. So they signal that, and you can see it kind of dynamically being changed. But if I do this for the TXT file, just regular Notepad file, it's not going to work like that. That's why I advise you to use some more advanced text editors. Let's say if I open Notepad++, you're going to see that it's going to tell me that the file has been changed. It asks whether I want to update it. Let's say I want to. So yeah, we're going to see the file is updated, and we see new entries here. Again, it's going to be useful later. All right, so essentially you collected the data. You have this file, this list. How to work with it further, how to process it. There is a manual processing. So if I press open next file, it's going to take this file and it's going to open the first file. You see, it essentially opens the My project. At the same time, my file has been updated. It added this some kind of separator with add signs. And the next time, let's say if I open next file again, it's going to open this the second file. It's going to be updated. You see, and so on and so forth. So the separators has been moved one line below, and it's going to move like that. Each time you're going to open the next file. So essentially it kind of sorts the files that already has been opened or hasn't been opened yet. And this is specifically useful when you need to process a lot of files, maybe add some changes to specific files, maybe add some new animation or whatever. And if you're just working with the list, was like handmade, maybe manually made a regular list of files, it's easy to get lost, maybe forget where you finished or something like that. The next thing that is going to be rather useful, if I remove this line, and of course if I save the file, it's going to start opening the file from the very beginning. If I want to start from the different maybe line, I can add the add sign here, save this file, and then if I open next file, it's going to open the file after this sign. So there's this name of the file, and if we check what it opens, yeah, you see it opened the same file. And when you're working in this workflow, using this workflow, so to speak, even if my crashes, maybe freezes, if it freezes, something like that, you will always know what you have already processed, what is left to do, and so on. It is rather convenient, rather useful. Maybe, when you finish working, then you come back the next day, and you do not need to look for the files that you stopped working with. All right, but what can I do if I want to process files maybe in batches or something like that? There is a special mode for that. There is a tab called Generate Script. How does it work? How can we use it? There are these buttons, they generate the script, and it uses the generated script, actually uses the file name that you specified above and the save before checkbox. And it generates the script both for the next button and the batch code button. Let's actually check what is this next file code button and what is it used for. I'm gonna press it. It's a MEL mode, as you can see. And now if I open the MEL editor, I'm gonna paste the script here. And now if you run this script as is, it's gonna be the same functionality as the open next file script. But the thing is, when you're working manually, naturally you want to automate some kind of part of work when you're working with a huge number of files. You want to do something automatically. Let's say, let's take this guy, this file as an example. Let's assume I want to open this file, and when I open it, I want to maybe create a cube or something like that. Maybe I want to scale it up and maybe offset it to this position. Maybe I just want this, essentially. I'm going to copy this MEL code and then add it to this special section, which is going to be executed after the file has been opened. But this part of the code is going to be executed before the next file is going to be opened. So let's say, just for example, let's create a sphere. Maybe scale it up, of course, something like this. Offset it right here. I'm going to copy this MEL code, remove the commented line. So it's going to work this way. I'm going to open the file. It's going to create the cube. Then I'm going to do something manually. After that, this sphere is going to be added to this file, and then it's going to be saved. And the next file is going to be opened. And just for convenience, now we can take the script and just move it to the shelf or add it to the shelf. Let's try. I'm going to press this button. You see there's a file with the new cube. I'm going to press it again. File is going to be saved. The next one is going to be opened with a new cube. I'm going to save it. And let's actually open the previous file just to see what it has. And the previous one is this one. Yeah, I think it should be this one. Let's open it up. And you see we have a cube and we have a sphere because it was added before the file, before we switch over to the next file. So these are just small automations just to simplify our work with every single file you're working with. So by this point, I think you have already understood that it's kind of helpful and rather useful to know some scripting for convenient work. If you are processing a lot of files, batch files, then you should use batch code button. We pressed it, then we open the script editor, we open the ML, paste the code, just Control V. So essentially when you press the button, it's gonna save this code into the buffer and you have to paste it. And now this code is gonna open files one by one, which are present in the txt file. And then for each file, it's gonna do something. And this something is gonna be placed here. If there is nothing, it's gonna do nothing. It's just gonna open several files one by one. Let's maybe create a few simple commands just to illustrate the process, how the script works. So let's say after we have edited each file, we want to save it. So we're gonna check the save before checkbox. Then I'm going to create batch code. I'm gonna paste the code. There is file save, as you can see. For example, let's create maybe a cube, huge one, for example, yeah, something like this. Then I'm gonna copy these lines of code. Essentially, yeah, again, it adds a cube and then scales it up. And I want this cube to be added from the first file in this list. By the way, a very important thing to remember: if the script encounters an empty line, it stops execution, so it stops working. It is useful because, let's say, if you start working with a script, but you figure out that maybe you set something up incorrectly and you will just stop executing the script, you can just add an empty line and the script will stop. Or maybe you just want to process only these files, these 7 files. Okay, we have the script, let's run it. And we can actually see that it's going to open these files one by one. We can see how the file changes. We can swap between different programs and see that Notepad file is being updated. And there is the last one remaining. Okay. And that's it. Yeah. And then it counted kind of the last line, or rather empty line, and stopped. So let's actually check it whether it worked or not. If there are no add signs, it starts from the first line in the text file. Let's open next file. And we have a cube. Open next file. In the next file we have the cube as well, and so on and so forth. So logic is rather understandable, I hope. But I assume the hardest part here is to write some kind of script or command that's supposed to be working for your specific case, and it is 100% up to you. Another positive feature or advantage of the script is that when you're batch processing files and something bad happens, maybe Maya crashes, PC restarts or anything like that, you still can open this file and see where it happened, which file was processed, and so on. And of course, if something went wrong with the file, you can fix it, you can go back to this file, you can process it again. And the last tab, which I want to talk about, it's called Shadow Batch. What does it do? You see, when you are working with huge number of files, I think you don't want to visualize this process of opening Maya files constantly, because maybe you want to do something in a separate Maya file. So Shadow Batch solves that, because Shadow Batch runs separate Maya file which doesn't have UI. It just takes a minimal amount of memory, but essentially it's the same Maya, but it works faster because it doesn't have UI, it doesn't have any interface. There's no visualizations, no viewport, and so on and so forth. In order for this Shadow Batch to work, you have to create a MEL script, because it works only with MEL specifically. It's very important to remember. And then paste the batch code script, so this one. I'm going to open it. Yeah, this one. Save it. And this Shadow Batch is going to open the separate Maya version without the UI. and run Maya using this script. Just to check, just to make sure, let's maybe add the sphere. Maybe, yeah, this gigantic sphere. I'm gonna copy this command. Let's add it here. Okay, awesome. I'm gonna save it. Let's try running it. So what we want to do? We want to take the files from this list, want to open Maya in a shadow mode, so to speak, so without any UI, so we don't see it essentially, and then run this Maya script for each file. You see it's going to open this console, and then you have to wait for a while because it has essentially to load. The loading process is going to take some time, but once it is loaded, it's going to be super quick. Of course, actually depending on the script complexity that you have added, but now, yeah, it's going to start working. You can see it actually processed the information up to the empty line. So in process, you essentially can, while it is actually working, you can add an empty line, script gonna encounter this empty line and stop executing. It is rather convenient if you maybe saw issues, or maybe you figure out that maybe you don't need the script working up to a certain file or something like that. Or maybe it's time to go home and you want to save some time, so you don't want to process all the files. Yeah, you do you. All right, it finished working. Let's actually check whether it actually added our files. Let's remove add files for the script to start fresh. And you see we have this gigantic sphere. I'm gonna open the next file. It's gonna also have a big sphere, and so on and so on. Of course, naturally I'm using very primitive and rather simple scripts, and because it's up to you to create necessary script that reflect necessary commands, necessary operations that you want to use for batch processing. But it provides you with the interface, provides you with the means and workflow. Because it is essentially very simple thing. It's rather reliable and very convenient. And finally, you may be interested in how actually I use the script. I mean, what kind of operations, what kind of tasks I do. I want to show you an example. Recently, at my current project, due to changed specifications of the project, technical specifications, I had to open, again using this script, more than 1,000 files, so open more than 1,000 files, add certain modifications, add certain edits, and then re-export animations from that files. If I did it manually and assumingly maybe if I spent on it a minute at most, it would have still taken me at least a week. But in fact, it actually took me around 1.5 hours, and while the script was working, I was just drinking coffee and browsing internet. That's about the kind of automatic or batch processing. When it comes to manual processing, I had a few issues with certain files. They contained some errors, so I had to open them one by one and just made certain modifications, and I processed around 200 files with that.